everyone. Welcome back to Deep Images. We talk about all kinds of movies on this channel, and usually in a way that's kind of weird compared to most other people, but I think you'll get a lot of pleasure out of our deep analysis. So, we're covering a brand new topic I'm going to tell you about in a minute, but first, I'm Henry Covert. This is Francis Chiu below me, and the amazing Chuck C.F. Roberts, and our special guest host, Bill Mulligan. So, tell the host for this new topic I'm referring to.
Well, we are talking about comfort films, films that we turn to when maybe we're not looking to be particularly challenged or annoyed or anything else or made angry, just films that pick us up when maybe we're feeling a little bit down, just need something that we know is going to make us feel good because it hasn't let us down yet. And I'd like to throw this over to Frances and see what she's got.
Okay, well, one of my comfort films is The Sound of Music. Oh, so one of my favorite things, haha. But
Hey, I'm a John Coltrane fan. I get it.
this was actually, I have to say, I actually watched it when I was about three, just like when the movie came out, okay? And I was obsessed with it. I mean, first of all, my parents had bought the record. I played it about every single day. I have to admit, I feel sorry for my folks because I played that soundtrack nearly every day for 2 years. And then when I saw the movie, I was just completely blown away. Now, for those of you who don't know the plot of The Sound of Music, just in case, it's about a governess, Maria von Trapp, who is not doing that well at the Abbey because she does all kinds of really weird things, like goes to the mountains to chill out, to sing, to whatnot. And the other nuns are getting a little fed up with it, and so is the Mother Abbess. So she suggests that she become a governess for the summer. And she's going to be a governess to seven children, of all things. And so she heads down to Salzburg and she meets the captain and the seven kids, and they play pranks on her and whatnot. But she sort of manages to win them over, that evening. She actually does this really great. I mean, they actually put a toad in her pocket, but she just sort of pretends that later that night that it doesn't really matter with her at all. She goes to dinner and she tells them how she just loved their little gift, and she makes them feel guilty about it. They start crying at the table. And anyway, there's a thunderstorm and they come into her room and she sort of cheers them up with, my favorite things. And then after that, we see her taking the kids out to excursions around Salzburg, and they're singing Do Re Mi. And at some point, the captain he's out on an excursion to Vienna, meeting his girlfriend, the Baroness, played by Eleanor Parker.
Can you tell us
And
who
they
plays the lead character?
what? Oh, yes, sorry about that. It
Okay,
is Julie Andrews who plays Maria, and Christopher Plummer who plays the captain.
he's awesome.
And so anyway, he gets back. Um, he has a bit of an argument with Maria just right after these kids they're out and about in their these curtain made outfits that she's made, and then she takes them out on a boat excursion, and then they all fall over. And of course, the captain is not thrilled by this. He sort of scolds Maria right then and there, and then she tells him everything that is wrong with it, that the kids need to be loved and whatnot. And in the meantime, he hears these kids singing, he gets into it, and all of a sudden there's like this love scene between him and the kids. The kids really think, oh, he's a loving father and everything. And then he sort of starts to appreciate Maria for what she is. And later on, I think about a few days or so, they have a ball because he's going to be getting married to the Baroness. And Maria is dancing with one of the seven kids. I think I can't remember. Yeah, it's Kurt. She's teaching him how to dance the landlord. And meanwhile, the captain watches him and he sort of thinks like, I'm gonna I want to dance with her. And so he does, and then Maria kind of falls in love with him. And she sort of thinks, oh God, this is not gonna happen because he's supposed to marry the Baroness. And so she goes back in and she gets invited to some sort of party downstairs, but she's sort of unsure about it. And then the Baroness sort of follows her up there and says, yes, I think he's in love with you. And she's not really sure what to do, but she decides, oh God, she can't deal with it. So she's going to run off back to the Abbey. And meanwhile, when she's there, the kids really miss her. They do not like the Baroness. Of course, she's got these plans to send them off to boarding school. And so they're missing Maria, and they actually even go and look for her around the various nunneries. And I think one afternoon she gets back there, and she sees the kids again. They're really thrilled. And I think it's, of course, at this point, you don't know exactly how and why. But anyway, the captain decides he does not really want to marry the Baroness. And she actually does a really classy thing and says, hey, that's okay. I can tell she's in love with you. So he basically proposes to her. They get married. They go on a honeymoon. And in the meantime,
There's a
one
lot
of
of
the
singing.
Baroness's friends, I think it's yes, it's Max Detweiler. He is keen on showing he's kind of an impresario, not an entrepreneur, impresario of sorts. And he decides to have these kids perform at the Salzburg Festival. And so they go. And at the same time, the captain gets this sort of, not an invitation, or actually, sorry, an order to join the new to join the Nazi Navy, because at this point, this is the Anschluss. Austria is getting annexed to Germany.
What
It's
year does this take
1930.
place again? I forgot.
It takes place in 1938, and they actually make it sort of clear at the beginning, I guess, but it's easy to miss. But so it's like it's the last year of Austrian independence, if you know what I mean.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So anyway, he goes. They all go and perform at the Salzburger Festspiele, and these Nazi agents are around there, and they are desperate to get the captain. And so right after this thing, they actually win the contest and everything, but they go and escape to the first they go escape to Maria's nunnery, and they take shelter there. And then the Nazis are in pursuit, and I think Rolf confronts them, and they still manage to escape. And so at the very end, you get this wonderful scene where they're what's the song? It's Climb Every Mountain, and you see all the kids. They've gotten out of the car, they're walking across the mountains. And actually, in real life, that would have been in Switzerland, and they would have been heading towards Hitler.
Wrong direction.
So, anyway, the reason why I found this film really fascinating in these last few years was like I had read a book about the history of the 1960s. And then after that, and then after watching the movie, when I was watching the movie again, it struck me, actually, this sort of replicates so many of the themes of the 1960s.
Hmm.
And
And
most people have not pointed
this
that
came out
out.
what year? I forgot.
1965,
And who directed this? I always forget.
Robert Weiss.
I wanted to say that, but he directed everything, so I guess I shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's actually been a really long and interesting history behind it, because it was Maria von Trapp wrote her memoir in 1949. And then these Germans, a German producer had made the movie. And I think it was Paramount Pictures that tried to get the rights to it. And they got, the English, adaptation rights. And they wanted to get Audrey Hepburn to play Maria von Trapp. And in the meantime, someone at Paramount, one of the directors had actually suggested that they make a musical and to have it done with Mary Martin. And I think that was made in 1959, and it was hugely popular. I think it won an award for best musical.
Mary
And then
Martin,
after,
that's Larry Hagman's mother who played Peter Pan.
yeah, she's better. She's, I think, most well known for the Peter Pan role.
Okay.
And so that was 1959, and I think after that 20th Century Fox then wanted to adapt that into a movie. And that's when the producer, I think one of the producers at 20th Century Fox had gotten Ernest Lehman to write a screenplay based on that musical. And to make for the film. And then that's when he decided, he really wanted to get this filmed in Austria with all the scenery and everything. And that's why it's such a
Mm.
part of it.
Yeah, it's
And
beautiful.
so at that point, he wanted to get Robert Weiss, but he was working on something else. So he decided to get, I think it was Willie Wyler. And he brought Willie Wyler to a production to the musical, and he wasn't really keen on it. And so he was going to lukewarm on the whole thing. And then
Mhm.
I think Lehman kind of had a feeling about that. So he had, I think around September, he had gotten written to Robert West and shown him the screenplay. And he was actually interested. So that's when they started working on it in earnest. And I think they went and got some footage of Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins. And they were really impressed by it. So we have to get her.
Mm.
So they wanted her, and they were interested in getting. I think they had several choices actually for the role of the captain. Christopher Plummer kept turning them down, and they finally got him. But he said, "I will have to make some adjustments in the film." I mean,
Isn't this kind of his breakthrough role?
kind of
I think he
because
was
yeah,
pretty
both
much unknown. I mean, I know he
yeah,
wasn't even
yeah,
young then because
yeah. Well,
he's,
both he and
he's great.
Julie Andrews were relatively unknown. I mean, they had some name, but they weren't like big names. The one was the biggest name was actually the Baroness. Eleanor Parker was probably the most famous
Oh,
cast
okay. Yeah.
at the time.
That
And
makes
so I think they got the whole thing rolling around. I think they started filming in early 1960, like March 1964. They got all the kids and they were photo. I mean, they did all the filming and whatnot between March and October 1964. So anyway, I mean, one of the reasons why I found this so interesting, as I said, was just because it captures so much of the 1960s. If you compare that with the musical, there are huge differences. One of them, for instance, is Maria is much bolder in the film,
mm,
and she gets a new song, "I Have Confidence." And I think it is no coincidence that this is taking place after Betty Friedan had published her Oh God, the feminine mistake. Sorry,
feminine
I'm really
mistake.
Mhm.
blanking
Yeah, I've
out.
read that.
The feminine mistake. This was like a huge hit in
Hmm.
1963. So I think it builds a lot on that, and then also I think the scenery is building on a lot of this whole the nature movement. That I mean, in this period, because you had Rachel Carson writing Silent Spring,
Mm,
um, and she has this huge. I mean, she has all these scenes of like beautiful nature in Silent Spring, and I
hmm.
think there's another guy who wrote a book out. I think it's Udall. I'm not really sure, and then Lyndon Johnson gave a speech at the University of Michigan sometime in 1964 that picked up on a lot of these things. I think that there's sort of like, this interest in nature, at least in this period, and that's
Hmm.
this film really builds upon it. And then, of course, there's the whole war theme because the Vietnam War had just taken off around 1963, 1964. And the first protests actually started in December 63. And then there were
Wow.
more than, a few more about in 1964, 65. So there was, I mean, it wasn't there was like a huge critique of the Vietnam War, but it was really taking off at this period. So I mean, it led me to wonder if that whole role of the captain, turning down the Navy had anything to do with all these American men who are burning their draft cards throughout the 60s. I mean, it may have been influenced by, and then also influenced in return as well too.
Hmm.
And then the deal with the Nazis. I decided to look up. Were there any comparisons? I mean, did anyone discuss the Nazis during the civil rights movement? Around the early 1960s, 63, 64, 65. And there weren't that many, but the American Nazi Party did take off in
Gonna
1959.
mention that. Yeah.
And yeah, and they actually had, I mean, this guy actually had a hate bus driving around like, in Washington, D.C. So there might have been some connection there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Uh, are you referring to George Lincoln Rockwell? Wasn't he the leader of the American Nazi
Yes, it is.
Party?
Yes, it is George Lincoln Rockwell.
Did you happen to ever read the interview with him in Playboy by Alex Haley?
No, do
Okay, that was
tell.
that was dramatized in Roots: The Next Generation. So James Earl Jones played Alex Haley interviewing Rockwell, who was played by Marlon Brando.
Oh wow.
Did you ever see that?
No.
It was wild. It was pretty wild. I mean, if you watched it, it was interesting because I don't know how the people were in real life.
Right.
Because like Alex Haley has turned out to be a notorious liar through most of his career. I hate to say that, but it's just true. And a plagiarist.
Isn't he the one who played? I mean, who wrote Malcolm or helped was sort of like a ghostwriter for Malcolm X?
He wrote the
That's
book, yeah,
autobiography.
but it is
Yeah.
based on what Malcolm. Now that one's genuinely stuff Malcolm told him, but
Okay.
Roots is stuff that he picked up from other writers. Some of it word for word, and he was sued for Roots, and he did lose. It's just
Mm,
Roots made so much money and was such a popular TV show that they didn't let people, it didn't get a stigma attached to it, even though nowadays he'd
right.
be canceled, But he had plagiarized parts from this book called The African. But when
Oh.
they adapted it to uh, film on TV,
Mhm.
uh, James Earl Jones played a really good Alex Haley.
Huh,
He
wow.
made him seem really cool, and but I do think the coolest thing Alex Haley. I think Roots was important culturally.
Yeah, yeah. This is
My mom was
76,
obsessed
right?
with it. Huh?
This is 1976 or so.
1977 is Roots, and then I think
Okay.
79 or 78 is Next Generation. And the cast was all these black actors who were only in black exploitation movies at the time, and
Yeah.
occasionally on TV, and now they're all like starring. in this, and people like Ben Vereen, who really had never acted much.
Mhm.
Um, but I do like the Malcolm X book. Yeah, I think that's the best thing he did. But we're talking about Alex Haley.
So
We
yeah,
mentioned.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just it does really make you wonder. I mean, it's just, the sound of music is always like supposed to be like a cute film, for kids, but I think it does really pick up on a lot of the '60s subtexts. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe the next film should have been, getting high in the mountains with the Trap family.
Yeah, what was
But
up with
yeah,
not
it
having a
does.
sequel?
What?
Why didn't they have a
Well, actually,
sequel?
actually, the fascinating thing is a German movie that was made in 1956 did have a sequel about, it was called The Trap Family in America.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there was a sequel,
Would you
but I
call The
guess
Sound of
this one,
Music a remake of these other two iterations, or do you think they're different enough to where they just have the same source material?
I think they have the same source material. I remember watching part of the one from 1956, and it is, I mean, it's not that different from the movie, but I think that there's a lot more in terms of the characterization of Maria. I mean, they make her gutsier, at least in the 1965 film.
Hmm.
That's the impression I get. And the interesting thing is also, I think the captain, probably because Plummer did not want this to be like, really cute. I mean, he did call the movie The Sound of Mucus, but
Eh.
I think he had a role in making it more like making the captain more stern. And it struck me that, you see, one of the comments from the Trap family kids was like, oh, the captain was just completely different from their father.
Hmm.
The real father was laid back, he was cool. I mean, just really, a nice guy. And the one in the movie, he's much more, he's military. He's really offsetting, sort of off-putting, dramatic. I mean, sort of like a Rochester and Jane Eyre. No, no, sorry, more of a Fitzwilliam Darcy.
Oh
Sort of
wow,
dark. Yeah,
you're digging
dark
deep
and
now.
proud and all that. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think that's probably how they modeled it.
that's well, you have to have that kind of romantic tension if you're gonna
Yeah,
have the older kind of stern but cultured guy, and then the younger enthusiastic woman. So that's like an
right. Yeah,
archetype in literature. So uh,
yeah, exactly. And it's funny because actually in real life, Maria von Trapp was actually kind of difficult to get along with.
was what?
Very difficult to get along with.
Oh, okay.
And one of the kids committed suicide.
Oh,
At
Oh,
least, yeah.
what do you think about Nicholas Hammond's performance in that? Wasn't he the oldest son?
Yes, yes, he was the oldest son.
What was
Oh
his
wow.
character called?
Friedrich.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
people in my generation who are like geeks know that Nicholas
hmm.
Hammond played Peter Parker live action,
Yep.
and he
Yep.
was way, way too old to be Peter Parker and looked nothing like him at
Yeah.
all, except he had brown hair.
How
Um,
many films did he make?
I don't know. I mean, like, okay, he did two Spider-Man TV movies and did the series, and then he practically disappeared for years. But Tarantino put him in a movie. He
Hmm.
has a
Hmm.
small role in Nicholas Hammond. It's one of the last few he did. It's not the Hateful Eight.
Once was it Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
It was either that or then Glorious Bastards. But yeah, it probably was Once
Hmm.
Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think he played. Yeah, I don't remember, but I didn't know it was him when I saw it. Then I read about it, and Tarantino got him because he liked him as Peter Parker.
Sure.
Whereas
Yeah.
I didn't like him as Peter Parker. But
And
But
then
that's
Angela
as good as it got
Cartwright.
back then.
right, that was all we
Yeah.
had.
Yeah,
I liked Bill
Right.
Bixby though.
Hmm.
that's true.
So go ahead,
And
Francis. I'm
Angela
sorry.
Cartwright was in, I think, Lost in Space. I don't know if
Yes.
she was in other
Yeah.
films, but she was, I mean, in that TV show. And
Did
of
you
course,
did you
Julie
say
Andrews went and
Veronica
did that.
Cartwright?
No, is it Angela
Angela
Cartwright?
Angela.
Yeah, Angela.
Angela.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of the woman that's in Alien.
Alien.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
They're
And
not.
then
Now, okay.
the other girl was the little girl. I mean, the youngest one was like, I think, Kim Karat. I don't know if she's been in like some soaps. I'm not really sure.
Hmm.
And I can't remember the girl right above her who plays Marta. And then Louise Menzies. I no, is it Louise? No, Heather Menzies plays
Heather
Louisa.
Menzies. You're bringing back a lot of memories because when
Yeah.
I first saw it, I saw it with my mom, and of course, my mom was a trivia junkie and worked in a movie theater, so she told me all these names while we were watching. I didn't know Nicholas Hammond. I saw Spider-Man first. So then she's like, "There's Nicholas Hammond." I'm like, "There's oh my god!" But Heather Menzies, yeah, all these actors, yeah. And it's weird. I didn't make the connection years later when Christopher Plummer became a lot more well known that he
Mhm.
was he was the captain. But now I do. So thanks.
And let's see, who else was there? And then there was Peggy Wood who played the Abbess. And her voice was dubbed, as was the captain's, by the way. I think
Singing voices.
Bill Lee. Yeah, the singing voices, right.
Okay. So, what are your conclusions on this film, Francis? Why do you keep coming back to it?
I think at that, well, when I was little, I liked it just because of the music. I would play the soundtrack every single day. And today, I just really find it fascinating the way it just captures so many of the themes of the 1960s.
I think the photography is really incredible.
Yeah.
So
Oh
that's what
God.
that's what I remember the most, besides the music. Is the
Oh,
photography.
speaking of the food, Venus Schnitzel.
Oh God, like they were talking about, yeah.
Yes.
Well, all right, man. This is a good choice. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who love this one. What do you
Well,
think?
I think it's one of those films also that there was a time when I was a kid, there were certain films that they showed once a year on TV.
Mm,
Yes.
And
yeah.
and pretty much everyone watched that film. I mean, the other two channels would just give up and
Yeah.
show repeats or something. And The Wizard of Oz was a classic.
Hmm.
Yes.
Whole family would gather around, make some Jiffy
Agreed.
Pop popcorn, and watch The
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz. Dr. Zhivago,
Hmm.
Sound of Music,
Yeah.
Heidi,
Hmm.
which is probably most infamous for there was a football game going on. It looked like the football game had more or less been decided, so they cut to Heidi because that was scheduled to be shown that night. And when they did, the team that was losing scored a couple of very quick turnarounds, won the game, and football fans threatened to go burn down NBC Studios or whoever was foolish enough to make that choice, and they apologized profusely.
Heidi didn't do well compared to those other three, though. It
I
wasn't
have
every.
never watched. I mean,
It
I've
didn't
never
last as
seen
many years,
Heidi
at
on
least in
TV.
Charlotte. At least.
Yeah, but they were just those kind of feel good family films. The Ten Commandments was probably
Mhm.
my
Ten
favorite. They would
Commandments
show that around
every
Gone
Easter.
with the
Easter.
Wind.
Every
Gone
Easter,
with the
yes.
Wind.
Gone with the
Gone with
Wind.
the
Yes,
Wind.
yes, that was a big one. Movies that were so big, and this blew my mind when I was a kid, that they had intermissions.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what?
long.
My dad would tell, yeah, they're intermissions, so everybody could go to the bathroom or get some popcorn or something. These were
Because you
long
could play
movies.
them mostly uncut back then. I mean,
You could.
they weren't as
You
graphic.
you Ben-Hur was another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not great.
Ben-Hur was the first one where I remember most of the movie was shown pan and scanned. But
Mhm.
when they got to the chariot race, all of a sudden your TV screen would start to shrink and you're seeing widescreen. And you're like, where's this been my whole life? Or at least during the duration of
Hmm.
this movie. And you're like, I'm missing all this good stuff. They didn't
Yeah.
have the heart to pan and scan the chariot race because it was too damn big
That's good.
and too cool. And then it's like, why don't they make movies that are wide? Why don't they make TVs that are wide so we can
See,
actually see
we
these?
didn't realize it
That's
when we were in the
crazy
movie
talk.
theater. Our brain, me anyway, my
Right.
brain didn't register that the movie theater ratio was totally different than what I watched on TV.
Mhm.
Totally different. And
One movie.
my
The
brain
one
adjusted
movie.
it, I guess, and like, okay, whatever. So
Yeah, the
you,
one movie that surprises me that's not been on TV. I mean, during those sessions, is probably Singing in the Rain. You would think
I
that would
think
be
it
one
was
of the
shown more in the '60s than the '70s.
Yeah.
We're
good.
talking
Yeah.
about like the '70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
That
Um,
may
have
have been.
never seen it played
There
the
was
set.
a big hit movie that was shown once for the first time on TV that period, and it was shown intermittently all through syndication. And Bill and Chuck, I know you saw it probably when it was on TV. Was Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
It soared in the ratings. It like broke all the ratings records.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
they started showing the whole series over and over in syndication.
Was it
Yeah.
right? I think the first one was 1973, right?
Planet of the
I
Apes is
remember seeing it around
68.
then.
68, I
Yeah, the
think.
first
Yeah.
time it was on TV was like 74.
Oh, okay, yeah,
It
that's right.
broke it what somewhere like 74 to 76. There was what they called ape fever.
Uh-huh. Oh, we went nuts
Oh
for that
yeah.
stuff.
Oh yeah,
It
man.
was great.
Oh yeah.
And I still have it. I mean, that's the thing. That's awesome, Francis. This is good
Thank
memories,
you.
man.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Have you all seen it, by the way?
I've seen
Of
it.
course.
I've seen it
Oh
twice.
yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, no, an interesting little tidbit. Living up here in Northwest Arkansas, one kind of prevalent thing that goes on up here is you will occasionally have these big, huge families. They tend to be affluent. They include most famously, or these days more infamously, the Duggars.
Oh,
Mm.
yes.
Oh
Mm.
God.
But very big, very kind of rigid, kind of
Hmm.
legalistic Christianity. They correspond to what has been called the quiverful movement, which basically means you treat a woman's uterus like a clown car, and they have 19 kids and counting or whatever. But
That's a way of
sometimes,
life I wish would disappear personally. But
and the
to each
Duggars
their
are
own.
not the only family who fall into that, but there are a few up here. And for big town festivals and whatnot, they'll take them out and trot all the kids around, all gussied up, and just like wearing little pseudo alpine outfits or whatever. And you look at them and like, oh wow, the Von Trapps are here.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe that you would denigrate Chuck the Von Trapps by comparing them to the Duggars implicitly. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
we're going to
know.
get so much hate mail over this.
I'm a dick. I know.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what? You can criticize all you want. The future is for those who show up for it. People who have
Yep.
14 kids have 14 descendants who are going to carry on their legacy.
Yep. And what a legacy.
That's
That's why we got to
that's
grab them and make sure they learn that not to be that way.
yeah, good luck.
Well, some of them are going to prison, like the Duggar guy, right? So,
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
so Bill, I'm turning it over to you to wrap things up for us.
Well, thank you. So look, folks, those of you who are out here, if you would do us the favor, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. Hit that thumbs up, hit that star, whatever there is that acknowledges, yeah, that you've enjoyed this. If leaving a note is one of the strongest things you can do. It is worth so much. And listen, okay, we all know we're all afraid of what's going to happen with AI. It's terrifying. Trust me, it's stuff you don't even know about. It's scary. This is produced by humans for humans. There is nothing artificial
And it's
about us.
totally independent.
That's right. So I think in the times to come, what's going to keep creativity, human creativity alive is us seeking out things like this and showing your support. If you're willing to take the time, I mean, obviously, let's say, hey, watch our stuff, but you're already watching it. And if you're going to take the time to do that, take the 2 seconds it takes to just click on a like, subscribe, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't hurt at all. But the more subscriptions we get, the easier it is to keep this thing going. These things tend to build up slowly. We've been working at this for some time, get an ever changing but good crew. And a couple of folks who just will always have been here from the beginning and will hopefully be here all the way through. And we appreciate it. We like having our audience grow. Tell your friends. And if you know any lonely truck drivers who need to download some podcasts and listen to them on the way, we're pretty much all talking, not a lot of visual here. So it's that keeps me awake. It's kept me from driving off the road sometimes listening to podcasts.
A
Better
lot to
than
be
music.
said for- yes.
You can only play Radar Love so many times, to keep the adrenaline going,
Yeah. Truck drivers
It's
are
a
probably burnt
genuine
out on radar low.
As a genuine public service.
It is.
Yeah. Where's our medal? But anyway, thank you very much, and like and subscribe, and we will be back with more comfort movies very soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're back with Deep Images. We are still talking about films you watch for comfort that are like comfort food to you. And we have a special guest host, Bill Mulligan, who's going to talk to you about it. I'm Henry Covert, and this young man down here is CF Roberts, my co-host.
Hey, thanks. Well, so we're talking about comfort movies that we enjoy watching that we've probably seen way more times than is necessary. Take us back to a time, and this is definitely one of those. This takes me back to my childhood. When again, this is a long time ago. You can tell by looking at me. We only had three major channels and two indies: Channel 11, Channel 9, and CBS, NBC, ABC. Channel 9 and Channel 11, sometimes Channel 5 too. They were great because they would show lots and lots of old movies and repeats. That's all there was. There was none of this infomercials or anything. They had a lot of time to fill, and they filled it with a lot of cool content. And at some point, I discovered monster movies, especially Japanese monster movies. Seeing, I don't know which was the first Godzilla movie I saw. It may actually have been Godzilla, which is a hell of a good way to start.
Yeah.
But at some point, I got to see them all. There were a few that were a little hard to find. Attack of the Mushroom People, probably the toughest. But
I love that movie.
there was, and of course, they would just show whatever. Son of Godzilla. Next one would be Godzilla versus Megalon. There was no rhyme or reason.
Mm-mm.
No.
You started to realize though some were better than others.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that really stood out for me was Rodan, 1956. So it's relatively early in the cycle.
Yeah.
They were not at the point yet where they were joining all these monsters together. They were introduced. Here's Godzilla. Here's another Godzilla. Here's a Mothra. Here's one about Mothra. Here's Rodan. There was nothing to really make it sound like the characters didn't talk about Mothra just like Godzilla. No, it was these were completely independent things. And at some point, someone had the brilliant idea. It's like, what would happen if Godzilla fought Mothra? Then we realized we are living in a shared universe. Before that was really a thing.
I think Toho realized it. They're like, oh,
I
wait a
think they
minute.
Yeah,
What?
and that was brilliant. Really, I mean, they did what Marvel did. Is there an earlier example of a shared universe? I don't think so.
Universal monsters to an extent.
You're absolutely right. You're at 100% absolutely right. What am I thinking? I'm crazy. Yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
you're right. Well, Rodan, and it's usual. It's directed by Yoshiro Honda. It has special effects by, and I know I cannot pronounce this man's name, Eiji Tsuburaya.
Subaraya.
Thank you,
Or,
Tsuburaya. Yes,
yeah, that TS stuff gets me.
I'm bad with English. So the superstars, the folks who know how to do this, and Rodan would become, I wouldn't say one of the most popular of the monsters. Rodan actually kind of became also ran. He was always in the mix, but he never seemed to be anyone's favorite, and that's probably because they didn't see Rodan, the original,
Right.
which is a really good movie, a really good
Yeah.
monster. And the other thing, at some point, they changed his face. It looked. Someone once commented that the Rodan costume looked like it was stored on its beak because he started getting this pushed down, almost looked like a Jim
Yeah.
Durante nose or something.
Yeah.
They made him more human,
Hmm.
and that's too bad because this is a hell of a movie. It was the highest grossing science fiction movie of 1957. We didn't
Wow.
have a whole lot of competition. But here's the thing about it. Here's what makes me love Rodan so much. It's the plot of the movie. And most monster movies are pretty simple. We blow up an atomic bomb. It unleashes a creature that's been frozen or sitting at the bottom of the ocean. It shows up. It starts walking through places, knocks down buildings. We try to fight it with our weapons, but they laugh at it. And then some scientist comes up with a secret weapon that is able to exploit the monster's weakness. We destroy it. Everything is returned from whence it came, and we go right on setting off atomic bombs until the next monster shows up.
Hmm.
Rodan's different. Rodan does something that the only other movie I can think of that does this is another favorite of mine, Gorgo,
Mhm.
where you spend the whole movie thinking this is about Gorgo, and then Gorgo's mom shows up, and you
Hmm.
realize that the monster that you've been so impressed by is a baby, nothing compared to Gorgo's mom.
Like
Well, that
Grindel.
yeah, Rodan takes that to a step further. We start with earthquakes and volcanoes and a bunch of men that are being torn apart by something in the water. They're working in the mines, and there's something grabbing them, and they scream. We don't see what it is, but they die horribly. And you're like, damn, that's really some scary stuff there. And eventually they find a survivor, but he's got like amnesia. He's been through so much trauma. He's the only survivor, and he saw people die, and you don't know what he saw. Meanwhile, there's a UFO. Oh yeah, yeah, UFO is like causing all kinds of trouble. They get a picture of it. Doesn't look like much. Kind of looks like a wing. Well, I wonder what that's all about. And if I remember right, when they show the picture to the guy, he suddenly starts screaming, "Rodan, Rodan!" And then we have a flashback, and it turns out the monsters. Now we have been exposed to what we think is the monster of this movie. It's a giant centipede, scary as crap. Nothing more. Centipedes are scary, and giant centipedes, man-eating giant centipedes, are super scary. So here's the monster, this giant thing that just eats men like they're popcorn. And
There
then
are a
this,
whole bunch of them.
yeah, there's lots of them. They're all
Yeah.
over the place. So okay, that's a pretty scary movie right there. It's basically the monster that challenged the world. Another favorite of mine. Um, and then this guy has his flashback, and he's trapped in this cave, and they're all over the place. These horrible centipede monster giant things. Oh, what could be worse? There's an egg. There's a giant egg there, and it hatches into a giant pterodactyl who eats these centipede things like they're mealworms. And we realize this is just delightful that this movie, and this is fairly long into the movie. I think we're about halfway through before Rodan shows up in Rodan, maybe more. And we realize that that's such a great fake out. The monster that we thought was such a terror is nothing more than a bite-sized morsel for the true monster, Rodan. This is, if the other things are monsters, this is a god monster. And like all god monsters, he flies out there and they try to fight him. It's no good. It's a cool costume. The flying part's really neat. Like all flying monsters in Japanese movies, his flying creates, you know, tornadoes and hurricanes and knocks down buildings as though they're miniatures made out of plaster. When he's stomping around, it's kind of cool. They were the early kaiju movies were really good with the high speed photography
Yeah.
where it made the creatures really, slows them down and gives it a better illusion. For Gigantus, the fire monster, they actually speeded things up to make things look a little more frenetic as the monsters were fighting. Once we got into the monster fighting thing, they seem to have gone away from that slow motion that makes parts of Godzilla, parts of Gojira so nightmarish.
The
Um,
sequel to Gojira is actually what they turned into Gigantus, but
yeah, it
but
was,
the actual original movie is a lot better, I think. The
yeah,
Japanese,
yeah.
it's a little
No, it is.
softer in
Oh,
tone to just Horse Godzilla,
a,
maybe.
a bit much, and Anguillus is always kind of a fun monster anyway, but
Yeah.
Oh,
they
yeah.
went a completely different direction. Things are speeded up, which I've heard different stories that was actually an accident. The cinematographer
Yeah.
undercranked instead of overcranking, but they were, Honda was not about to humiliate him, so he said, I like it that way, and actually, yeah, it makes the monster motions look like it's pretty frenetic.
Hmm.
So then it turns out just when you think you got it figured out, there's another loose end. There's more than one Rodan. There's two Rodans.
Hmm.
And then we get to the climax, which is absolutely unique in the kaiju film things, where we figure out a way to stop them. We're going to bomb the volcano that they're living near and cause an eruption, which happens, and the gases escaping from the volcano cause one of the Rodans to fall into the fire where it starts burning alive, and the second Rodan refuses to leave it, and you get this, gorgeous music by what was the name of the
Akira
if
Ifukube.
Fukubi,
Fuku,
yeah.
yes, thank you. Whose stuff I absolutely love. I mean, I have
Yeah.
that on DVD or CD, and
Nice.
I'll play it. It's beautiful, gorgeous stuff. He
Great
would reuse
soundtrack.
his themes a lot, but he would change them subtly enough that you could tell, oh, this is the Godzilla theme from this one, and this is the Godzilla theme from that one. He was absolutely fantastic. Uh, the music at the end is so mournful and sad, and even the humans, okay, they defeated the monster. The monster had to be defeated. There's no room in this world for something like that. But it's a very Japanese thing. I mean, maybe I don't know how much it matches what the narration was originally, but the English narration really gives you that feeling of sacrifice. And you got to watch all these films, especially the ones from the 40s and 50s, with the knowledge that this is made by a country that is just now digging its way out of absolute defeat
Yeah.
and destruction.
Hmm.
And just such a scar on its national psyche, the idea of self-sacrifice and of these monsters are showing a very human trait, not just a human trait, but noble human traits, some of the noblest ones. It's sad. I'm watching this and like, okay, so I'm a kid who my favorite was probably as a kid Son of Godzilla, ugliest Godzilla suit. And Son of Godzilla now, Minya seems like a joke, but I freaking loved that movie when I was a
I
kid.
did too.
What kid wouldn't love that movie?
Yeah.
And even that one has kind of a somber ending. These Japanese monster movies did not get enough credit for not just showing, oh, they knock things down, but also having not being afraid to show a little heart
Hmm.
and tell something more than just simple. A lot of the critics didn't see them for anything more than just what they thought they were, but there's a lot more to it. Rodan's a really well-made movie. It's a cool little premise, Now I don't know how many people were. I can imagine how cool it would have been to watch that movie. Well, I mean, that's actually how it was for me. I didn't really know what a Rodan was.
Right.
When I saw this, I didn't know what it was about. I thought, 30 minutes in, I thought it was about giant caterpillar monsters. So when there's suddenly a giant bird creature, a giant pterodactyl, and it's like, forget the centipede monsters. They're nothing. They're gone. They were they were nothing. Now we got this. And like, wow, this movie is the greatest ever. And then kind of a downer, but an uplifting downer of an ending.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
this
poetic.
movie. Yes, very poetic. This movie takes me right back to a time when I watch this movie. I feel like I am watching it as a child in the living room. And my house was like living room, dining room, kitchen were all pretty much open. I mean, there was a lot going on when you were watching a movie back then. It's not like now. And it was a TV that was bigger than its screen. The TV was huge, the screen was not.
I
Um,
remember that.
I get that feeling. I can almost smell the cigarette smoke and the ashtrays. Remember ashtrays? I haven't seen an
Ah, yeah.
ashtray in probably 20 years, but we all had them. And
Mhm.
it takes me back to the 60s and early 70s.
Hmm.
That was a time that is gone and never coming back. And that to me is very definition of a comfort movie. I see a childhood and a time and a place and people that are just not with me anymore,
Hmm.
but they still live on in my memories. And I sometimes it's, if you just think about those things, you get sad. I
Yeah.
lost my dad almost exactly a year ago, and I'm still sad about that.
Hmm.
If I think about that directly, but if I watch a movie that I watched with my dad, it still brings back his memories, but it doesn't bring it back in a way that makes me sad
Yeah. I had
because I'm remembering watching it with him, and that's a thought that takes away from the loss instead of just the loss. It's something I can, here's something we enjoyed together.
Yeah.
So to me,
That's
those are the ultimate
cool.
comfort movies.
Yeah. My
Kind of
Wow.
a,
okay.
Yeah.
I know that's heavy stuff for a movie about a giant
No, no.
pterodactyl, right?
I was gonna say my parents and I weren't really on good terms when I finally got of age to move out, but I finally started just crutching on them for laundry and sort of things. Occasionally, they give me $5. They didn't live far from me, and I discovered that my mom, who had, like I said, worked in a movie theater in Burlington, North Carolina in the early '60s, and was there through a lot of like Psycho, Terrors of the Black Museum, all the stuff she saw right in the theater, and but anyway, she became obsessed with VHS tapes. I had no idea this was happening because we weren't really talking much. So she had bought a whole VCR and a whole bunch of movies, and I was like, okay, so now we actually have something in common for the first time since before she became born again and kind of lost her way. No offense, but she it was incredible. And then unfortunately, it only lasted like a year or so. She was starting to have problems with her leg, and then finally she got diagnosed with Parkinson's, and it accelerated pretty fast. And so, but that little period where it's like, okay, I kind of made peace. Well, me and my dad, we were civil. I can't say we made peace, but we were civil. But then I moved back in with them to help him when my mom was a rehab unit, and so he and I did actually get along for the first time ever. Um, he watched some of my mom's movies. Sometimes I could talk to him about that stuff. That's the kind of stuff I'd always try to push my parents to because I felt like they were both intellectual, creative people, but they never were given any appreciation or opportunity by their family or their people around them, their jobs, their culture to do anything with it. So they kind of internalized it, and they built up all this knowledge and good taste, but they were rooted in the terrors of real life day to day. They forgot how to escape into fiction and fantasy and a realm of ideas, and that saddens me. So I tried to kind of do what I could near the end for both of them to kind of add some more of that back to them. I feel like if they had been able to channel those things when I was a kid, my life would have been a much better place, much healthier. But you get the cards you're dealt with. So, but yes, that reminds me. So me and my mom did bond over some movies, and they were all unlikely. My mom would pick these at random, and they've turned out to be classics. Eve's Bayou by Cassie Lemons just came out on
Hmm.
Criterion. It's an incredible movie. I'd never even heard of it, and I was like collecting tapes like crazy. She's like, watch this movie with Samuel Jackson and the girl from All My Children, and it was incredible. I was like, wow, I think we should cover it sometime on House Channel actually.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
But anyway, yeah, that's my story.
Anyway, are you guys a fan of Rodan?
I
Oh
like it.
yeah.
I haven't seen it in a little while. I've seen it a few times,
Yeah,
but I want to revisit it now. I
it's
don't
worth
think
a
I own it.
revisit.
Yeah, no, I think a special thing with the Toho movies, especially back at that time, was the first time I ever saw or had any inkling of Rodan. I may have been 7 years old, somewhere around there, and my mom would sometimes we had these old reel-to-reel movie projectors, and we watch home movies, and occasionally she'd pull out these kind of poppy,
Mm.
miniature
Yeah,
films that didn't have any
I
kind
remember
of
those.
Castle Films.
yeah, they had no kind of a sound or anything like that. You were just watching silent trailers and things like that. And there was one for Rodan. And my mom just kind of cautioned us kids, this may be the sort of movie you won't like.
Hmm.
And I just became enthralled with this video. And it's the whole scene where the planes are chasing him, and you don't really get a good look at it until right at the end, where he goes down into the river and then comes flying back up and
Yeah,
splits the bridge in half. And the miniature work they did back at that time and around the first Godzilla movie were so good,
Hmm.
and just it just looked fantastic. And of course, I think she said to me, I was 8 years old. She said, "Do you want to watch a monster movie?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And so she plops me down in front of the TV and puts on the very first Godzilla movie. And I sat there and watched it and was absolutely enthralled. And from there, I just became a monster kid,
hmm,
fanatical, and love that movie. Love all the old Toho movies. Just
Yeah, they're great.
yeah, they're fantastic.
I think everyone should own, if you don't, the Criterion uh, Godzilla Showa era box set.
very good set.
One of our longtime people on our show, Tim Tolbert, actually gifted it to me before we started the show when I was doing videos by myself to review, and I'm like, it's $100 set. He's like, God, I want you to review it. I want you to have it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
And it has
can't
everything.
say no.
They went through and remastered everything. They got the English version, the Japanese version, and it's a giant book, and it's got all this new art of Godzilla and all the monsters, and now like Tubi has all those prints. So when you look the movies up
Yeah,
on Tubi, it'll show the artwork from the Criterion ones, the new artwork. So
nice.
has the old artwork inside, but you open the book and it's got like DVD, Blu-rays stuck in it, and then like a book. It's a treasure.
Yeah, yeah,
Love it.
good stuff.
All right, you gonna wrap us up, Bill?
Um, Folks, if you enjoy us discussing this sort of thing, and if you look, how many do we have now? It's hard to say. I mean, we haven't this one out yet, but we're over 100.
As we're filming, we're about to put out the 200th episode, so this will be close.
Wow,
Yes, we over 200.
wow, okay. So there is a lot of stuff there. Now, maybe not every movie is your cup of tea because we cover some extreme stuff. We even have a series of extreme films. Not for everybody. That's fine. That's the great thing about
Me and
cinema.
Kirsty McQueen talk about them.
Yeah, but there's a lot of cool things that are some movies you may not have heard of that you may actually maybe you'll find a favorite. So if you appreciate us doing all that and everything, thank you for listening. That's the first thing. But hit that like button, doesn't take long. Subscribe, let your friends know about this. We're building up our fan base bit by bit. It's great to see. And if you feel so inclined, please leave a comment, write a letter. That's just like the biggest ego boost ever when you look down and someone's actually taken the trouble to do that. I mean, I'll tell you, just off the hey, people underestimate power of that. Everyone and their brother goes on Facebook and complains about politics. How many
I
people
used to.
actually write? How many people write a letter to their congressman? You
Exactly.
could have more influence than you can imagine because not one out of 1,000 people do it. When they get it, they pay attention. It's meaningful. It carries way more weight than 1,000, you know, anger emojis on a
Well, what we
Facebook
could
comment. They
do,
don't care.
I think with politics, it's hard to move it. But when you're all on the internet and you're all on YouTube, like where we all are, it's like mutual aid because most of us are poor or we're doing this channel. Self-made, independent. Some people have made millions of subscribers and made millions of dollars. Some people are like us. We're still kind of struggling along gradually. Um, but yeah, you hit the like button, you subscribe. Bill said it another thing, like the power of one or the one finger or whatever. It's like that's where
Yeah.
you can make a difference because you're not going to have any uh, authority figure knocking you out. You're going to have algorithms, and they're going to absorb that little button, and they're going to go, "Oh, we're going to give a more spotlight to this particular show." So
Yeah.
it's weird how it works, but we really appreciate your help with it.
And we really do appreciate any comments you want to make, any suggestions, ideas. If there's a movie that you'd like to champion that maybe we haven't heard of or it's not getting enough love, let us know about it. There's probably at least one person among this group that probably also loves it. But anyway, thank you all for watching.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.